Thank you for joining us on this webcast today to talk about the survivor experience. While we all have had some unique journeys, we have some things in common. And many of those include wanting to help each other, wanting to support each other. We're on a constant quest to learn, and we want to improve. And like many people, we like to educate. A lot of people have never heard of encephalitis before. So I'm lucky today to have Jane and Jacob joining in talking about their experience. I'll add some things along the way because I too am a survivor. And we're just fortunate to all be here to kind of share the different angles. And although life has thrown us some challenges and some twists, not everything is bad. There's some incredible things to celebrate as well. So we hope you learn some nuggets of value along the way. And in just a second, I will introduce Jane and Jacob. First, I want to just walk you through who Encephalitis 411 is. We created this nonprofit 7 years in the making and have been 501c3 certified for the last 2 years. When we finally put the energy and the funding behind it to launch, we exist simply to improve the quality of life for those impacted by encephalitis. And as we know, that can take many different twists and turns. We're here for the survivor and caregiver community in particular to advocate for them. We're also here for the medical community, as well as raising awareness for the general public. We have some major initiatives that we've undertaken. We have a real interest in educating on the medical community side. Many doctors, because of how rare this is, 20,000 Americans per year, many doctors have not seen a case, or if they have, it may have been in medical school or quite a long time ago. And since no two encephalitis cases are alike, and in terms of how it unfolds, sometimes it's maybe difficult to diagnose or understand at the beginning. So as you can see here, we have a lot of different initiatives underway, but that is one that we are very tightly embedded with the medical community to work together. And we appreciate them. Like I said, this is one of many webcasts that we're doing today. And in the spirit of recognizing World Encephalitis Day, tune in. If you're not following us already, follow us on Facebook at Encephalitis 411 or our website at www.encephalitis411.org. So the journey begins, and I'm going to ask first if Jacob and Jane would please kind of share a little bit about themselves and their story. Jacob, I'll start with you.
All right, well, my name is Jacob Savoie, Louisiana native, currently in the DC region. So happy to be taking part in this awareness. Thank you so much, Becky, for setting this up. In my situation, although some people are different, I was in college. I was on top of the world with nothing could bring me down until got sick in the final semester. I was lucky to be diagnosed with herpes simplex encephalitis, actually very quickly, within 12 hours of being admitted to the hospital. I was diagnosed by the neurosurgeon after a few tests, the usual tests, the spinal tap and things of that nature. Like I said, very lucky to be diagnosed early, and spent about 7 days in the hospital. Had to completely change everything in my life, drop out of school, recover, relearn who I was and what it's like to be a 22-year-old college student. And that's how my journey begins, how I go on to, get back in school and achieve my goals and graduate with a degree.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jacob. Appreciate that intro, and glad in your case that they were able to diagnose it so quickly. As a lot of us know, it's often not the case. So we're glad that you were fortunate enough to get the care you needed immediately. Jane, we'd love to hear about your story as well.
Okay, I am Jane Myers, and I am a native of Indiana, northern part. Mine's quite different than Jacob's. I had symptoms, kind of gradually creep up on me, start beginning with a rash, and then within the next few days, a severe headache that put me into the hospital. Diagnosed, really, I wasn't diagnosed with anything for a couple weeks. before I got a diagnosis of what caused the encephalitis was the West Nile virus. Jacob, you sounded so good, and here I am stammering. I was a nurse working in a busy doctor's office. This put me on my back for months and months and months, and I begged for help. I couldn't walk. I would have to crawl to the bathroom. When I was even staying awake for a good 2 weeks, I was so lethargic. I was not awake. I don't recall the first few months of my illness. Everything that I do know has pretty much been told to me by my husband and my mom and dad, my main caregivers. Other than that, it's all hearsay, what I'm telling you today. If it wasn't for a very astute best friend of mine who works in the medical field, I honestly don't think I'd be walking today. She insisted I see a neurologist, or I get my husband to get me to see a neurologist. And they finally ordered an MRI and a spinal tap and found that, it could be Guillain-Barré. It's been a real journey. I never really, as a nurse, I could almost cry now. I mean, the care that I received at the beginning of this illness, and then I'm so fortunate to be alive that I can tell the story, because so many of them don't have the knowledge that I had, and thank God for my family, because had they not gotten me to where I was.
Thanks for sharing the beginning of your journeys. I'm going to go to, as we discussed before, if I can get my computer to work, there we go. Kind of the chase for diagnosis. So we're fortunate again, Jacob, that you got diagnosed so quickly. I can tell you that when people interact at different conferences that I've been to in a group setting, and you ask people to raise their hand if they were diagnosed within the first 2 to 3 days, rarely do very many of them go up. And you say, 1 week to 2 weeks, more hands go up. And in rare cases like my own, it's, way down the road, and you've been misdiagnosed for MS or stroke or lots of things that were scary. I do remember when I got diagnosed and they said it wasn't a stroke, it's encephalitis. I said, awesome. And then they kind of shook their head and said, I think you have a lot to learn about encephalitis. You might want that stroke diagnosis back. So I know it's very different for everyone, and it's part of the challenge for doctors. The scientists in them, to treat something, you need to know the cause, right? And so
right.
They don't know what it is. They are equally as frustrated as we are on the patient or the survivor and caregiver side. So in working with a lot of the doctors that are on our board and our medical faculty, they certainly share the frustration. So it's not that they're not good-hearted people trying to do the best they can. They're trying to do the best they can with the information they have, which is often limited. They know some people that have been severely damaged. Jane, to your point, in the early days, walking, talking was difficult. Yet the MRIs turn out normal, and there's no white matter or anything to point to. So it just points out the limitations of diagnostics today. It's one of the reasons that we've decided to focus heavily on the medical side is to do more research in how that can evolve over time. So Jane, you mentioned some of your chase for diagnosis. Were there any other things that stood out in your mind, or maybe what your husband has shared with you that maybe you probably can't recall from that time? Any other notable points that you would like to make about the diagnosis itself? Or I know that you are the administrator for the West Nile, or one of the West Nile groups, and you read a lot of threads, so there may be other things that you would like to comment on about the diagnostic phase.
My husband and my parents are the ones that requested that they draw West Nile labs. And I remember that the very first physician said, it's not West Nile. We don't see that around this area. So, it was them. They specifically asked, please draw the West Nile to see if that's what's causing this. But so little. I mean, I doctored for several years trying to get help. I called health departments, I called CDC, you know, so little was known about it that there was just nothing they could do for me. I wasn't able to walk, so they did start some physical therapy, multiple physical therapy for a year and a half, 3 times a week. But other than that, you know, they were guessing games. EMGs, the test, the diagnostic test, but it never pointed to any kind of treatment, just suggestive therapy.
Yeah.
Per se.
Yeah, that's not uncommon, unfortunately. So, you know, once we get past that initial phase, and like you, Jane, and I believe you too, Jacob, that first, well, I don't know how long it lasted for either one of you, but it was probably 2 full years before I wasn't sleeping 12 to 16 hours a day, sometimes even 18. I would wake up, maybe eat something, and then, you know, just collapse again. And so it was, for me, it was fortunate that I was working out of my home. Otherwise, you know, I would have had to call in sick every day, but I would literally walk a few steps down the hall from my bedroom to the office. I would get on any necessary call, and oftentimes I would wake up with the phone, you know, ringing, that it's, you know, the call had ended, no telling how long ago, but I'd fallen asleep during the meeting itself. So I don't know what I would have done. I'm sure I would have lost any ability to work if I had not been in that setting. So I was fortunate in that regard. But, you know,
and I found, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jane.
I found that I wanted to sleep like you did, but then it was not, I'd be awake for an hour, sleep for a couple hours, wake for 15 minutes, and then sleep 5, 6, 7 hours. It was fitful sleep, up and down for months and months and months. And I think it was
your brain would control how much rest you could get.
Right.
I totally agree with that.
Did you do the same?
Yes, actually, for coming to the new me, that's one thing I was having to really deal with was when would my brain stop working? When could I sleep? I remember when I first got home from the hospital, part of the new me was I would think every single idea that passed through my head was a great idea. When I found out I was diagnosed with herpes simplex encephalitis, I thought I had an STD. So it kept me up for 24 hours just Googling about it. There's so many other different stories. The new me, I thought there was nothing holding you back. It took some time for me to be able to drive again, but as soon as I could drive again, there was more ideas going through my head. I wanted to get a 1970-something old pickup truck, but I couldn't afford it. I didn't even have a job. So how could you really do these things? As part of the new you, there's nothing holding you back, and there's nothing that would keep your brain from thinking. So it took a lot of the family to hold me back, and I think they should have just tied a rope around me and kept me in one place all day. That would have been the problem solver.
Funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I haven't heard about it in that particular situation. Now, Jane, for you,
the first time. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Been a nurse before, right? So, I mean, you're kind of coming from the healthcare specialty, and then suddenly you're catapulting into being a patient yourself. What was that like?
Well, you know, working in the healthcare field and then becoming sick and trying to tell others in the healthcare field that you're not able to work, you would think they would be more understanding, but I felt that they expected a lot out of me. So I did try to work. I put in 2 half days. They allowed me to come into the office for 4 hours. And that 4 hours I sat in an exam room bawling my head off because I didn't know how I was going to get home. I was so ill. And eventually they fired me. And this was 2 months later after the diagnosis. But I wanted to attempt it. And there was just no way. And that's when And then it was 8 years before I did anything. But yes, I'm a nurse, and it's terrible to be a patient. People that are in the medical field are the worst patients ever. I know that, because we know just enough about what we actually have to become very demanding of care, but yet we don't understand that when there isn't an answer. We want answers. We're scientific. Our scientific brains think there's an answer to everything. There has to be an answer to it. There's something you can do for me. I know better than this.
Yeah, I hear you there. And then Jacob, you said that you were in your last semester of college. Oh my gosh, what a disruption to, it's great that you finished your degree later. What was the journey like there? So you're kind of recovering, you're discovering this new me that needs to be lassoed, evidently. And so how much time went by between, when you had to drop out and then when you got to return to college?
Well, since it was the spring semester, I believe I dropped out probably about mid-February, and then went back home to stay with the parents for, I guess that's 4 or 5 months before the first summer semester course was available. Mm-hmm. So to get back into it, decided to enroll just one course for the summer, just test it out and see how it would go. It was challenging for sure, just to memorize lessons from one course, so once a week class. So it was definitely it definitely pushed me to the edge to see what actual memory I could retain. Taking notes and cramming is at a whole other level after encephalitis.
Do you think, Jacob? Do you think that because you did push yourself that you're farther ahead for doing that? Because to me, I'm listening to you. And you sound so intelligent, and so you're putting words together that I feel like I'm stammering, and I still cannot. Word recall to me is horrible. I can think a thought, but I can't put it in words to tell people. But you sound complete. Do you think you're pushing yourself maybe helped you in the long run?
I would definitely say so. Not only just to get the college degree, but to tell your story. I mean, I think I've been wanting to tell my story. I was diagnosed with encephalitis 12 years ago now. So in the last 12 years, I've sat with a pen in my hand and paper in front of me and wrote down my whole story and trying to tell as many people as possible so they can know what to expect.
Good for you.
Yeah, it took a lot of time. I went through a lot of paper.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, Jane, I guess, I think everybody's situation is different. And, but my doctors have commented that by me pushing to work and stay employed and stay engaged, the fortunate thing is my boss was with me when it all unfolded. So they were very understanding. I was in another country in Asia, so I'm far from home. It's actually a new company, so nobody really knows me very well yet. So it was kind of a weird kind of setup, but I think, my doctors have attributed a lot of the recovery to pushing the heck out of myself to be as quote, normal as possible. I wouldn't call me normal by any stretch, but there's a lady that has described this, and I can really relate to it. So if you take two major highways that come together, regardless of where you live, and let's just say that intersection catches on fire, there's an earthquake, whatever, it's gone. You still have to get around the city, right? You can't just not go to the other side of the city anymore. And so as you think about it in relation to the brain, it's like when you're pushing yourself, the brain is trying to find new roads, and it might take 8 roads to get past that intersection, whereas before it was 1 road. And I think that kind of goes back to what you're saying, Jane, is, I suffer from aphasia as well. I have to take a lot of notes, as Jacob pointed out, and, taking notes helps me retain things better. I have a visual memory, and so I can remember what page something's on, like it's on the top right, but I may not know what the words say. I just know I'm looking for something on the top right of a piece of paper. I'll recognize it when I see it. So it's a whole different way of thinking. But I think,
Right.
the more you challenge yourself, and this isn't for everyone, I'm not suggesting this, it depends on at what stage you are in your recovery, and just, what the capacities are. Some people are not as fortunate to be able to do tricks like that to help on memory or aphasia or whatever. But I often just stop talking, or my husband will fill in the blanks. He knows exactly where I'm going, and he'll say the words for me so that I can just keep moving. Otherwise, I sit there and I'm like, there's a word for this. I know there is. So
Thank goodness.
yeah.
Yes.
It'll be here a long time. Otherwise.
Yep. My husband's the same way. He's often finishing my thoughts for me.
About, I didn't know what encephalitis was. And so I was kind of pleased when I got that diagnosis, not knowing, oh my gosh. There's a lot of things I wish I knew before that I don't know now. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I know now that I didn't know then. Did you experience that? And if so, what was your overall experience with it? What do you wish you had known about encephalitis before?
Pretty much what we had just talked about, pushing yourself. I think maybe I felt more of my brain needs to rest, so give it all the rest it needs. But I also think that I should have pushed myself to maintain at least some kind of level of, I don't know the word I'm looking for. But I don't think I pushed myself, and I didn't have the opportunity to do any kind of employment that would have been allowed me in my physical condition too, not just my brain condition of my brain, but my physical condition. Had that been there, and had I known what avenue to go, I probably should have done more.
Jacob, what about you? Is there something that you wish you had known about encephalitis before it actually unfolded?
I think something you wish you would know is that recovery takes time. There's no, it's impossible to fast forward to the end. You don't know where there is an end, if there ever is going to be an end. I think that's the main point. And the patient needs to know, the family needs to know, the friends need to know, because that's a long time. And if a friend, if a friend drops off the face of the earth, you haven't seen it forever, there's always a reason why, and sometimes it's a medical reason. So it takes a lot of dedication, and like I said, it takes a lot of patience for the especially for the parents, for the parents and the siblings of the ones who are infected. They need to be educated. They need to know what to expect, how to deal with it, how to get the victim to just slow down and think things through. I've said that 100 times. That's what we can't do, and it's the deciding factor in everything.
Right. Totally agree. Yeah, the recovery is different for everyone. And I've attended a medical conference once, and they had different levels of recovery. A score of 0 meant you were dead. A score of 1 meant you had severe impact. You had a lot of needs and assistance. And the score of 3, or I'm probably getting the numbers all backwards, but anyway, just to illustrate, 3 was, somewhat independent, but still needs some help. And 4 was fully recovered, totally independent. And I said, well, I think we're missing a number there, guys. I don't need assistance like I did in the early days, but I will never consider myself fully recovered. If you look at the number of medications I take, it doesn't make sense. So I think that,
and I won't either. I mean, I'll never be fully recovered.
Yeah. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to know, whether you're in the healthcare field, you're a family member or a friend, or it's your own, medical team looking after you. I just think that we put on a good front.
We do. The pain is on the inside.
Yeah. So in terms of, we're all learning. So we become experts basically through our own experience, right? So what advice do you have for other people, especially in their first year or two? We've already talked about, it takes time. Don't be hard on yourself. Give yourself time to recover. Take naps when you need to. Listen to your brain and your body. What other advice do you have, especially for people that are just starting down the journey and they just don't know what to expect yet. And they think, okay, well, tomorrow everything will be better. Okay, well, next week everything will be better. And so on and so on. What advice would you have for those that are just starting the journey?
Ooh, that's a loaded question right there.
Yeah.
I think I would say the first thing that the caregivers need to know is anything can happen. There's no way to know, to predict what's going to happen, like you just said. I think you need to get down to the nitty gritty and make sure you know what your family is saying, and what the patient, you have to know what they mean when they're talking, and you need to make sure they understand that you need to work together to get over this. And it's just step by step. You're not gonna skip a month or a year, or it's gonna take a long time. So that's just a message just to first give to the patient, and then to everyone else, family and friends. It's going to take some time. You're not going to be talking to the guy or the girl that you knew before, and it's going to be your duty to help them learn who they are again, and to love them forever.
That's great advice, Jacob. Jane, anything you want to add to that?
I wish that I would have journaled, or somebody would have journaled for me. Time, I think when you tell somebody it's going to take time, they're thinking days, weeks, months, but it's more like years. And with a journal, you'd be able to look back and read the progress that you've actually made, even though you may not feel like you have.
I like that, especially, and I think you're right, Jane. There's times where we are our own worst enemies because we're so hard on ourselves, and we want to go back to who we were before, and it's not possible. So I know for me, if I'm going to take a trip as an example, I've learned over time that if I try to fly to New York City, go through a bunch of meetings, maybe host a conference, whatever, that if I don't get there a day in advance to give myself some time to rest, or even start the meetings in the evening and give myself a break, that I may end up in the hospital or it happened too many times. So now when we plan a trip, especially as a family, we spend the first day and a half just resting, taking in the view, learning about some of the things we might want to go do and explore. And we do the same thing when we come back. So I typically don't take any meetings the first day or so that I give my body that.
And we don't have to give excuses anymore.
Yeah.
I've been doing this long enough, and I'm old enough now that I don't feel like I have to give you a reason. Where I used to feel like I had to explain, oh, this is what happens when you have this, and this is what you go. Anymore, it's like, nope, I need a nap. I'm going to go take a nap, and I don't have to explain that to anybody. Well, no more excuses.
Love it. I love it.
I feel like y'all must agree. I feel like that's just the world we live in. So many people don't believe you, and they doubt what happened to you, and they just don't understand what's actually happening to you. And so when that happens, you just got to strap on your boots and say, you know what? I don't care. This is me, and this is what's going on. You can deal with it, or you can let it go.
Yeah. Well,
exactly.
It's a good segue into some of the questions that came in. This one I love in particular because I hear it quite a bit. So either one of you could go first, but how do you respond to people when they say, well, you look fine to me, or I'm so glad you had a full recovery? Sometimes I just, I have to bite my lip, or my tongue. But how do you respond to that, Jacob?
I would say this is why I've got a notepad in my hand, so I can remember what we're talking about. But there's really some people you just respond, well, it happened to me and I'm dealing with it. Some people want to learn about it much quicker, and some people would rather just hear you say, I'm fine, I moved on. That's about it. So I guess you really got to gauge the situation, how much people actually want to talk about it, if they want to actually learn more about it and see how you survive.
Yeah. What about you, Jane?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the person who's asking or making the comment. If he or she is a good friend and just I have a few that are sarcastic about it, well, I'll give it right back to them in a pretty sarcastic way too, with a few choice words too. Family, I hardly anybody asks me anymore, and I think they just assume I'm good. I'm good to go because I look normal, so they think that I feel normal, whatever normal is.
Right.
It's going to depend on the person and how much I feel like getting into it and how much I think they're going to listen to me anyway.
Makes sense.
Some of them don't care to learn.
Yeah, I run into those too.
Yep.
But I do try to use teaching moments when possible.
Jane, definitely. It's something like politics,
Yeah. Yeah. Jane, you kind of covered this a minute ago, but I want to ask it more pointedly on behalf of somebody that submitted a question. You had mentioned before that you don't have to give excuses anymore. You take care of yourself the way you need to, and that's great. This person asked, what do you do for yourself on a bad encephalitis day? So, if you have good days, bad days, what do you do to keep yourself motivated on the bad days?
Honestly, on a bad day, I don't really care if I'm motivated or not. I might turn around and go back to bed, take a hot bath, read a book, play on the computer, but I don't feel like if I don't feel good, I'm going to stay home and I'm not going to do anything for anybody but myself.
Great.
Thankfully, it's just me and my husband now, and he's pretty understanding. If I don't feel like want to cook supper, I don't cook supper. If I don't feel like cleaning or running to the store or even going to work, I just don't do it.
Right.
I'm fortunate that way that I can do that. Not everybody can do that, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I'm glad you got a good support system around you. Jacob, what about you? Do you have bad days? And if so, how do you handle them?
Well, I definitely have some bad days. When your memory is affected, it can happen anytime. There's work-related incidents that I didn't take down and cost us a problem at work or with clients. Same thing happens at home. If you don't put your chores up on the refrigerator, or you don't remember that your daughter's Valentine's Day is coming up and you need chocolates, you got to write that down. But at the same time, it doesn't matter if it happens at work or if it happens at home. I've always got the family, and I've got an amazing wife and two wonderful kids, 6 and 3. So whenever I need something to change my mind, all I got to do is track them down and say, "Hey, what's up?" And then they'll talk your head off. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we have one last question, and somebody commented, there's so many bad things that we focus on. Are there any positives that have come out of encephalitis? I know for me, it's just kind of finding a mission in life. I always knew I was passionate about wanting to do something for nonprofit, but I couldn't find what I wanted to do or how to channel that energy. And so it kind of gave me a mission. And that's been a positive thing. I also spend more time with the family and prioritize things a lot differently. I used to be absolute workaholic, and I still work, but it's not the most important thing in my life anymore. And I quit a very good job a couple of years ago because it was time to take care of me. And I don't think I would have made that decision before. I think I would have continued to run myself on the ground, but starting to honor myself more, I guess, is one of the positives that's come out for me. Jane, Jacob, any positives that you've discovered since going through this experience?
Patience. I'm a lot more patient. And I think I'm less quick to judge others that might be in a similar situation, even though I have a nursing background. You hear about so many people that just like us. We look normal. You don't believe them, but I'm more believing of what other people could be going through, and I feel more. I want to give back, I guess, and I think I did that somewhat with the support group. I want everybody to feel supported, and to know that there's always somebody there that's willing to listen and that is like them, and they don't have to feel so alone.
Sounds like all good things to me, especially the patients. I'll if you can send some my way, that'd be great.
Well, not always, Becky. More so than I could be.
Well, I'm glad you're doing good things because of it. You certainly have a great group that you help monitor and manage, and they get the support that they need when they know that you're somebody that they can rely on when they go to that forum. Jacob, what about yourself? Any positives that came out of encephalitis for you?
I'm going to go with a one-word answer, and I think that's going to be outlook. I was left with a completely new outlook on life. Whenever you're able to take a step back and look at what you're doing, it was able to buy me some more time. I had an extra semester of school. I was able to change positions in the firm I was working for. It gave me 6 more months to learn a different field. I got a second national championship for our college football team. Woohoo, go Tigers. And it's everything that happened after that. The new job gave me new opportunities when I graduated. It opened up my job for DC. I met my wife up here in DC. So I have to say, the new outlook on life that it gave me has just changed everything. It's put me where I am today.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for everybody that tuned in to view us. I hope you'll join us for some of the other webcasts, and have a great day. Thank you.
You did the
Thanks,
same.
Becky.
Happy World
Thank
Encephalitis
you.
Day.
Nice to talk to you, Jacob.
Nice to talk to you, Jay.
Be well.
Thank you.